Hi, everybody. Welcome to Conversation with Calvin, We the Species. I'm speaking fast. We have a lot to do. I've been sitting here with Beatty Carmichael, and we have been bonding because we have so much to bond and talk about. The book that he wrote, The Prayer of Freedom, the whole spiritual side of healing, of which I live. And we were just off topic here for the last 40 minutes, connecting, telling him my life journey and how much it's kind of concentric circles with what Beatty teaches and works with. And I'm such a believer. It was a song about the monkeys. I'm a believer, whatever that was. So this is very special to me, this interview, because I live it. There are elements of my life and my healing and my spirit. Everybody knows, my spirituality. It's a wonderful gift. And I'm so glad that the universe connected Beatty and I to talk about this. And we're going to continue talking about this. So I'm going to introduce Beatty, but before that, he's going to hold up a copy of my book. There's a tortoise in my hair. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Betty, why don't you take it away and do a little background? And then we have some fascinating, really fascinating questions that expand the mind and heart and soul. Take it away.
Well, very good. And Calvin, it's really been great to be here for 45 minutes already. And now we just let the audience get to have a little insight into what we've been doing. So this is really, I'm excited to be here and thanks for the invite. So a little bit about me. I come from seven generations of medical doctors, one after another, almost 200 years worth. And rather than going into medicine, I actually went into business for about 25 years. And then 9 years ago, God pulled me back towards healing to follow along with the genealogical calling that's been in my family line. Since then, I've helped over 1,000 people get free of incurable things like addictions, all forms of chronic pain, such as arthritis and fibromyalgia, anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts, glaucoma, and just a whole lot more. And I've done it simply by removing the spiritual roots that are the cause of most of these things instead of treating them as a physical issue. And I found that this process is successful about 90% of the time. I ended up writing a book, you can see it behind me, called The Prayer of Freedom. And it outlines a step by step process that people can do this entire thing on their own. You can actually get the book at theprayerfreedombook.com. And what happened during this time frame is I started to see people stuck in chronic pain, anxiety, trauma, addictions, and everything else. And they tried everything. They tried medicine, therapy, nothing worked. They felt hopeless, not because they didn't want healing, but because they stopped believing that it was possible. And that realization with me is what changed everything. I realized if medicine couldn't fix it, then the answer had to be somewhere else. So I started looking on the spiritual side of things, and I started studying spiritual laws, not religion, but the spiritual laws that actually drive so many things in our lives. And I used a scientific research-based approach in applying these laws. And what I found was startling. Most of our infirmities are not physical at all. They're actually spiritual in their roots. And it's a spiritual infirmity manifesting as a physical issue. And that's why medical science hasn't been able to find a solution. They're looking in the wrong spot. But I've found, Calvin, that when you remove the spiritual root, the physical issues, when you remove the spiritual root, the physical issues disappear. And so I started to develop a simple approach to prayer that works when nothing else does. It's not about praying harder, it's about praying with the right structure that taps into those spiritual laws and starts to remove these spiritual roots. And that's what I've documented in my book, The Prayer of Freedom. Um, the results as I started to do this is sort of like your story, Calvin. For those who don't know, Calvin's had some really, truly miraculous healing in his life. And when I started to apply this approach with the prayer of freedom, I began consistently seeing miraculous breakthrough in people's lives. I began teaching this, and I'm a volunteer teacher still over at one of the largest addiction recovery centers in America. And for every 10 students who come into my class, all I do is I give them my book. And in the back of the book is a worksheet where all of this is laid out. So like if you can paint by numbers, you can go through this thing on your own. And so I give them my book and I give these recovering addicts opportunity to simply take the time to go through this process, identifying the spiritual roots in their lives, and then using a structured prayer to eliminate those spiritual roots. And here's what's amazing. My class is about a 30-day class. And for every 10 students coming through, they're full of addictions like drug addiction, alcohol, sex and pornography type addictions. They've got chronic pain, arthritis, fibromyalgia, lupus. They got restless leg syndrome, joint pain, or pain in the back. They got migraines. They have allergies. They have all kinds of mental illnesses, anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, borderline personality disorder. Most of them are chalked up on meds to handle all that. And in 30 days, nearly 9 out of every 10 coming through my class leave my class with zero. All of it's gone. I'm seeing arthritis disappear,
Mm.
PTSD vanish, sleep being restored. And this happens even after decades of people struggling with these issues. So that's what this show and what we're going to talk about is
Yeah.
all about. So I'm really excited about being here.
Yeah, and I'm really excited. You know, we could have gone for hours to talk, but part of the I holding this up. Part of if somebody asked me on an interview recently, what would you want people to take away from that? And one of my takeaways is there's something beyond our
That's
realm.
it.
Earth isn't the end all. I've
No,
been
it's,
given, I've been, it's not the end all. It's just a station. There's something beyond our realm, and you can call it a million different things. Bottom line, it exists. My stories, my life, my journey has been, and, you know, I'm not on the cover of Time magazine, but it's been wonderful and a gift. So there's something out there. So, uh, you say, and let's plunge into this. You say many people feel stuck in chronic pain, anxiety, or addiction, and they aren't even looking for healing anymore.
yeah.
They've given up. Why is that?
You know, when you tried everything and nothing works, our tendency is to stop. You're old enough to remember a man named Zig Ziglar. I
Yeah,
used
sure,
to, especially in sales, you were mentioning sales. So
sure.
Zig used to talk about teaching flea circus and how do you teach the fleas to only jump a certain level. He said if you put a bunch of fleas in a box and you put a lid on the box, they'll keep hitting the lid of that box enough times that they realize they can't break through it so they stop jumping high enough. Then you can take the lid off and they never jump out. And I think what happens in our life is we pray, we go to the doctors, we try this, we try that, we take therapy, we take medicine, nothing works. And so we give up and say it must simply be how life is going to be. And so once you give up, it's because you tried everything that you think is possible. And now you say, this is life. That's why people are stuck.
Wow, I can see that. I can see that. So your journey into helping others find healing through prayer is kind of unique. So
Yeah.
what first, and you kind of touched on this, but maybe just go over it again. What first led you to this mission? Uh,
Hmm.
and how did, you know, prayer become such a central pillar for you?
I laugh and chuckle at this because it's going to sound crazy for a lot of people, but I'll tell you the true story and I won't hold anything back. How's that? Fair enough?
Go right.
Um, 9 years ago, so I grew up in a legalistic, very highly conservative church that said supernatural stuff has ceased, that everything you need's in the Bible, you don't need any miracles of healing or anything like that. So they would pray for people, God, please heal this person if it be your will. And then I started watching, it was on Netflix at the time, it's no longer there. It was a trilogy of documentary videos of simply a guy going around with a camera filming people out in the public as they would just walk up to people on crutches, on canes, or whatever, pray for them, and they were instantly healed. And it's like, oh my gosh, I couldn't believe it because I was taught to believe that never happened. And then I started to see it video after video, hours after hours. And something welled up within me. I realize it now that is that family mantle of healing that's been coming down my generation. But something welled up in me that said, I got to understand this. I want to do it. I spent 6 months studying the spiritual laws of how things happen spiritually and is this even true? And I finally got it in my guts. It was October 2016 to just walk up to some strangers. So I went out to a grocery store, gas station, and Walmart. I walked up to people who looked like they were in pain because they're walking with a cane or on crutches or in a little scooter like at Walmart. And I just said, Hey, I'm out praying for people. It looks like you're in pain. Do you need prayer? And out of 18 people I prayed for, a third of them, six of them were instantly healed. Things like degenerative discs, RSD, which I came back later and asked my dad, who's a doctor. So what is RSD? I saw it instantly go away. He said, RSD is a neurological disease that creates extreme pain. Doctors don't have any clue what's going on, and it's incurable. He said, if that went away, that's a miracle. Okay. So I knew I was on the right path. I saw all kinds of things, arthritis and everything else. So I started to get excited. I went home to my church. It was a mega church, and I told my senior pastor, and get this, his first comment was, well, Satan can heal too. And then I didn't like that answer. Then I went to my next senior pastor there at the church, and he said, well, Satan can heal too. Literally his first words, first comment. So I said, okay, I'm pretty much out of it over here. So I started pressing on my own. I started to study ancient biblical scriptures on spiritual laws to see what more I could learn. Within a year, 90% of the people I was praying for were instantly healed. Glaucoma, deaf ears, post-operative surgery wounds, all kinds of things that are just truly miraculous. I started to move into another realm of working within the spirit, helping people get free of things. And I started to see a pattern. And the pattern was when people were being healed, and it was instantaneous. I mean, I'm talking about minutes, not days. I started to recognize that it was a spiritual issue and not a physical issue. There's just something that it made that connection for me. And then about 3 years ago, Calvin, I went out as I did every Saturday because I was keeping my work going at the time. So I just go out and I found this one place at Walmart that was just beautiful because it was a great place to reach out to people. And I went back out there, and on this Saturday, just like everything else, 90% of the people I'm praying for were instantly healed. I went back out the next week, it was only like 50%. The next week, it was like 10 or less. And it's like, oh my gosh, it's gone. And it was startled. Think about like if we're talking about sports. So I went to Auburn during the years of Bo Jackson, great big football player,
Yeah.
Heisman Trophy winner, and everything else. And imagine Bo getting out there and all of a sudden he can't catch the ball. He can't run. He can't do any of these things that made him spectacular. That's what happened with me. It was like this shock. So I prayed to God and said, what happened? He said, I took your gift of healing away. And I said, why? It was helping so many people. He said, because now I want you to learn to do it through what I call authority. It was basically talking about legal rights and open doors. I understood what he meant, so I changed my approach. I still went out to Walmart, but now rather than me praying for people, I led them in what I had understood over the years, how to dissolve and remove these legal rights. So I led them into identifying a few legal rights, praying over the to remove it. And I saw instantly 90% healings, but this time they were more dramatic, deeper type of healings, COPD and other things that I had very little influence with previously. And then I started to systematize this thing because I realized that I could only help so many people. But if I could systematize it so that anyone could do this, then anyone could be helped. And that's what led me to write the book, The Prayer of Freedom. And that's what led me to start to push this message out and say, hey, here's the handbook, step by step, how this works and how to do it on your own. And the proof of all of this that I'm so excited about is just like what I'm seeing over at the Addiction Recovery Center. And not that this is focused on addiction, but if you know anyone with addictions, they have all the problems of 20 people wrapped up in one person. I mean, they've got trauma, addictions, pain, mental issues, relationship conflicts, abuse, everything. And so if it can free them from all of that,
Wow.
this is a piece of cake for most people.
Wow. Again, to reinforce and back up what you're saying, and I tell everybody, and I say it till I'm blue in the face, I'm a regular guy.
Yeah,
As regular as they come with my Rutgers football and basketball and just every aspect of my life. I'm a regular guy, yet I've been given this gift. We all have the gift. So I've been given this gift of spirituality and I've survived and I've been healed and I healed because in my own little way, and that's why I'm intrigued to read your book, and I will to kind of mirror image of things I'm doing and what you're teaching and the things I've learned. So I'm just saying what you teach and what you talk about, it really works because in my small little microcosmic world, I live it and breathe it. So that's why I'm such a believer in this, and I'm glad you're here.
yeah.
Um,
Speaking of really works, can I share just a few stories?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I remember, so my wife and I were headed to Walmart one day. This was a couple years back. And there was this homeless couple sitting at the base of the store at the entrance. So we stopped and prayed. I always like to just pray for people. And I said, anything we can pray for? And they said, yes, it was something like they were getting an apartment and maybe it was something praying about that. I forgot. But we took them inside to help buy them some stuff for the apartment. And while we were there, I picked up a book on spiritual growth for them, and the couple's name is Brandon and Lanita. And this was a November day, kind of chilly. So Brandon had on a knit cap and it had Levi's in great big words right across the top. So as we're walking, I was teasing Brandon and said, Brandon, you're going to have to steal the book from Lanita because she's going to be tied up on it. And then Lanita said, oh no, Brandon will read it to me because I can't read. I said, oh, I'm so sorry. Did you never learn to read? And Lanita said, no, I know how to read, but I can't see to read. Everything is blurry. So I asked her, we're just standing there as a little group there in the aisle. And I said, can you read the word Levi's on Brandon's hat? She says, no. I gave her the book and said, can you read the book? And she had to literally pull it up about 3 inches from her eyes before she could read anything. And that's when she was sharing how bad it was. I said, well, I don't think God wants you to have blurry vision. Let's pray about it. And as I'm about to pray, God prompted me to ask her, do you have unforgiveness for anyone? And she said, by the way, unforgiveness is the number one cause of most of our little issues. She said, yes. I said, who is that? She said, it was my ex-boyfriend. He had beaten her up. He'd taken the back of her hair and grabbed her by the back of her hair and slammed her face over and over again into the edge of
Wow.
the dresser, breaking out all of her front teeth. She grinned and she had no teeth, top or bottom, on the front of her mouth. So just really traumatic. And I said, would you be willing to forgive him? And she said, yes.
Wow.
Okay. So I led her in a prayer of forgiveness. So now the prayer of forgiveness undoes the spiritual root of unforgiveness. And it's a simple prayer. You don't have to well up emotions. She wasn't welling up any emotions about it. I just led her to say, God, I forgive Bill for what he did to me. That was it. And then I said, God, would you now clear up Lanita's vision? And literally within about two
We froze.
on Brandon's lap.
We're we're kind of freezing. Hmm.
Yeah, you froze earlier too. So I'm
Yeah.
gonna, am I back in? Testing, am I
Yeah,
back
you're
in?
back in. The
Oh, okay,
connection,
great.
I'm getting a thing, the connection's unstable. Let's keep moving on.
Okay, great. So we can just edit that part out if you edit. But so what happened is within just a couple of minutes after asking God to now heal her eyesight once she forgave her ex-boyfriend, everything cleared up. She could read the word Levi's on Brandon's cap. She could see all the way to the end of the store. And then I took the book and I opened it up and I held it about 4 feet away from her and said, can you read this? And she could read it from 4 feet away, perfectly clear. So legally blind eyes instantly heal through forgiveness. Another friend of mine, he's my age, I'm mid 50s. I'd like to be mid 50s, I'm a little bit toward the end of the mid 50s
I'd kill to
now.
be in the mid 50s.
I know. I'd kill to be at 40, and some people say, oh, 40 is so old, but it's all a matter of, it's all relative. But my friend Bud, he used to play college football, and he hurt his hip in football, and he's now at this age about 54 years old. His hip has been in pain the entire time, and it's been getting progressively worse. He's needed a hip replacement for at least 5 years by this time. He was walking with a crutch everywhere, including his house. And as I'm on the phone with him, I said, Bud, this just sounds like torment, like there's a spiritual root. So think about this. It was a physical accident of a football injury that never healed, got progressively worse. And I'm saying in my spirit, this feels like a spiritual root. So I asked him a few questions of different things that could be an open door or a root. And the only thing that happened, watch this, was he used to sleep around in high school. God says that's wrong, right? It violates those standards in our conscience. So, so I said, would you be willing to repent of that, to say that I'm sorry and confess it was wrong? He said yes. So I led him in a simple prayer. God, I confess sleeping with those girls were wrong. And that was basically the essence of it. And I said, God, would you now heal his hip? And earlier, his hip pain was a 7 on a scale of 0 to 10. Say, stand up and check it out. And he stands up and he starts to cry. He starts to, I mean, he can't even control himself. It takes about 2, 3 minutes, and he finally comes back to the phone and says, Beatty, I am out of pain.
Yeah.
First time in 35 years. I just texted him a few minutes before we came here. That was 3 years ago. He's been traveling, taking cruises. He's in Dallas today. He doesn't walk with a crutch anymore. The pain's gone. It was a complete healing, but the root was something that happened in high school. And I'm seeing this type of stuff all the time.
Wow. And I'm a believer because I live it.
It happened to you.
Well, it sure did happen to me, and beyond with witnesses. Everything that's happened to me is always, it's not I'm alone on an island. I'm always around people, and these things happen. Uh, um, so and we'll tell you more. So I'm stuttering because I have all this stuff inside that I wanted to get out because uh, I'm really excited about this and in your message because I live it. Um,
Yeah.
so you've emphasized prayer as a like a technology for transformation. Can you walk us through what that looks like in practice for someone struggling with chronic pain
Yeah.
or emotional trauma? And you've touched on some of these things.
Yeah. So I also want to, as I do, I wanted to share for your listeners, this isn't about religion. It's not about going to church or going to synagogue or going to mosque or going to temple or whatever it may be in your form of religion. It's not about a belief system. Well, you have to believe this because I'll be honest, of the ladies in this addiction recovery center where I teach, none of them believe they're going to get free of anything. And they are so startled when they do. This is all about following the spiritual laws that actually occur. And so the prayer process, kind of I'll call it the technology of prayer. It's not really technology, but it is a scientific approach. Let me rephrase that. It's a research-backed approach to the right type of prayer. So here's the background of what's going on at a high level so that the prayer process starts to make sense. At a high level, there is a God out there who created us. And he built into us a conscience, and the conscience has his standards of right and wrong. We don't have to be taught them, they're already built into us in the spiritual part of our being. Our body is physical, but our soul, our mind, will, emotions, is spiritual. And so when we do something that's wrong, that violates the standard of the God standards in our conscience, that's why we automatically feel guilty, at least initially. If we ignore it enough times, then we crush our conscience and it just no longer responds. So when we do something wrong, God allows things to happen in our life that I call torments because they seem to torment our life and give us a lower quality of life. And they stay there until we confess that we're wrong. Here's the simple analogy. I have three children. They're now adults, but my daughter, when she was young, a lot of times she would just get really fussy, especially if she's going through, Instagram and things like that, and she's getting upset and uptight about all the her friends and these beautiful outfits and beautiful trips, and she thinks she doesn't have enough of it. So she gets really fussy and she won't calm down. So we will take the phone away, put her in timeout.
Yes.
And then she starts to come to her senses and she'll come out and say, Dad, I'm so sorry. I know I was fussy. I should not have been. Would you please forgive me? I said, Oh, honey, I love you. And I put my arms around her. I love on her. I said, It's time to get out of timeout now. In other words, all I was looking for is a change of heart to be willing to confess that she was wrong. And that's how we, as parents, guide our children to grow up. It seems to be a similar process with God. Because what I find is when we violate those things in our conscience, His standards, then all kinds of things happen in our lives from physical ailments, mental anguish, physical pain, relationship problems, everything else. And when we go back and simply say, I confess I was wrong, will you now please take these things away from me? They all start to disappear. So, with that as the backdrop, this approach to prayer is basically, at a very high level, is three steps. Number one is saying, God, will you bring to my mind anything that I've done that's violated your standard that I need to confess as being wrong? And then things will flash through your mind. It could be something you did or someone you need to forgive. Step number two, you're going to confess it as wrong. God, I confess that was wrong. I forgive so and so, whatever it is. And then the third step is then asking God to remove it. So that's this simple process. It's a little bit more complex, okay? Like the simple process of baking a cake is you eggs and flour and milk and some other ingredients, you mix it together, stick it in the oven. But there's a recipe to do it right. And what I've uncovered with the Prayer Freedom book is the recipe that makes it consistently successful over and over and over again. But that's the basic structure of it.
Interesting, interesting, interesting. I just want to go off topic for a second. I have
Yeah,
some questions I plagiarized from Barbara Walters.
good.
I'm confessing.
All right.
I'm
No,
confessing.
no torment for you.
No, no torment. I like this. It's and you don't have to answer it. It could be a couple different answers, but here goes. Excluding family or friends, and I think I know the answer, but whatever. Excluding family or friends, somebody living or dead you'd like to spend a day with.
Besides Jesus,
Yeah, well, I knew that.
okay. I would say Jesus, Apostle John, Abraham. Uh, Outside of those people, uh, maybe John G. Lake. Uh, but really, when the best is available, everything else is second best.
Sure, sure, sure. And I have similar. It's fun. It's funny. I didn't tell you this before I went on air, but I did a spiritual. I went to clairvoyant in all my spirituality stuff. I did a clairvoyant, and she's down in Texas. She's wonderful. I interviewed her. She did a thing with me. She's a spiritual healer and a clairvoyant. Anyway, I'm 1,200 years old, and I certainly subscribe to that and believe that because I'm walking around in a constant state of deja vu. I mean, I see
Yeah.
things and it's a wonderful thing. And some of that I got when I went to Sedona. I've been to Sedona 12 times, climbing mountains barefoot to absorb.
Wow.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
to absorb through the soles of your feet. I
Yeah.
could tell you a million
I'm
stories.
totally familiar. The connection. I get
Yeah,
it.
yeah, but I see myself in biblical times. I actually see myself in biblical times,
I know
listen,
some people that have done that too. So I'm totally
yeah,
with you.
listening. And so she was for real because she told me stuff about myself that not even my wife out there in the kitchen knew. So there weren't glittering generalities here. She just nailed a lot of my history, and she said, "You're 1,200 years old. It's very strong." Anyway, back to business because you and I can go off on tangents for hours. To be continued. But anyway, do you see things like anxiety, depression, physical pain as symptoms of deeper spiritual imbalances If so, how can people begin to remove these roots and get rid of them?
Yeah. Uh, they are almost always spiritual issues, even if they seem like they have a physical thing. So anxiety and depression, those a lot of the times, those things are going to come because something happened in your life that was very fearful. A lot of times it comes from trauma, especially from an early age. At least a lot of the people that I deal with. Sometimes these things are spiritual, they come down your genealogical line because if you look up line, maybe mom had panic attacks and you got panic attacks and now your children have panic attacks. So anytime you see a pattern, and this is the one thing I want to suggest, anytime you see something that is a pattern that's persistent, you have like my friend Bud, persistent pain year over year over year off of something that never healed. Or something like someone else I know, persistent anxiety. Or you see a pattern of you keep losing a job 1 year at a time. You get 1 year, you get fired. 1 year, you leave. 1 year, you get fired. Okay. When you see the pattern coming down from your genealogical line, same thing. Anytime there's a pattern, there's almost always 100% of the time, almost a spiritual root that is driving that. Anytime you go to the doctor for something, they say, I don't know what this is. Or they call it a syndrome, or they call it a disorder like PTSD or other syndromes and disorders. Then that's almost always a, a spiritual thing. Even if they give it a name, they say, we think we know what's going on. If they can't fix it, it's almost always a spiritual thing. And that's the encouragement because most people live in things that are chronic in some capacity. And anytime it's chronic, there is usually something in the spiritual realm that is a root. Think about, if easy way to think about this, think about your grass. You have a beautiful yard, and the dirt underneath the grass is the spiritual realm. And everything in the dirt is what drives the grass and the beauty on the top of it. So when you see a weed, there's always a root down underneath. Anytime always there's that spiritual root, you get rid of it and it disappears.
Okay. Keep freezing, but I think you're back. Okay. You're back. We're having some internet. You're
Okay,
you're back. Okay. I want to jump. I had a last question, but I want to install that now because I like it and I want to make sure we get to it.
great.
So this was a kind of a last question, but it's important. Um, Betty, you said that most issues people struggle with, like chronic pain, anxiety, depression, addiction, actually have a spirit, which you just talked about, have a spiritual root. If that's true, how can somebody know if a spiritual root is behind their problem, and what can they do about it, like right now?
Yeah, so a great question, by the way. Most people don't consider that spiritual issues might be the real reason that they're stuck in whatever it is that they're stuck in. But one of the ways that you can know, besides just going through the patterns that I was talking about, is if you tried everything, doctors and therapy and more, nothing works, and it keeps coming back, then that usually means there's always a spiritual root behind it. But the good news is once you identify and remove that root, then that issue usually disappears immediately. It's not gradual, it's almost always immediately. I've seen people healed of things that medical science says is incurable. It's usually within minutes, almost always within 24 hours, simply by going through the prayer of freedom. And my book gives you a step-by-step process to do it on your own and to be successful doing it on your own. So if someone's out there dealing with something that you want to get rid of, chronic pain, persistent illness, anxiety, depression, addictions, relationship conflicts, or more, just go to theprayerfreedombook.com so you can get free of that. There's nothing to risk. I'd encourage you to give it a try. And people sometimes ask this, if you were to simply type in the prayer of freedom, like on Google or Amazon, there's so many prayers and freedom, you will never find the book. So that's why I go to the prayerfreedombook.com. It's got information, it's got some discounts, some free stuff, more, and most important, it's got a link directly to the Amazon page so you can get the book.
Okay, Jim, going back to the prayer of freedom, of course, it focuses on a spiritual approach to healing and breakthrough stuff. What role does one's thoughts and beliefs, especially about oneself, play in staying stuck
Yeah,
in an emotional, physical?
it's so this gets into a little bit deeper waters, but there's something called a legal right and spirits. Okay, spirits, most spirits, some people know spirits by the name of energy, others know it by the name of vibrations. I call them spirits, but it's a spiritual entity. And your thinking has a lot to do with it. So if we take thinking out like unforgiveness, unforgiveness is a thought. I'm not going to release that person. But if you think about other forms of thinking, like if I were to say, have there been any words spoken over you that haunt you? And if anyone in your audience says yes, then that's a thinking issue. I'll give you a perfect example with addicts. Uh, with addicts, they're taught in a program to get free of it. Is first you have to admit and acknowledge that you're an addict. So everyone gets together, and I would say, introduce myself. Hi, I'm Beatty Carmichael, and I am an addict. Well, once I agree that I am an addict, it actually creates an open door in the spiritual realm for a spirit or vibration or energy source of addiction to come and stay and amplify that issue in my life. So it has everything to do with what I thought. I think I am, and therefore I actually become that. So part of this process, and I cover this in the book, is how to change that thinking. If you've had any of those words that have been spoken over you that haunt you, but your thinking has a really, really big impact on it.
Okay. Um, what do you say? And again, you touched on all of this, but just to go back and you actually can never say it enough and hear it enough, because sometimes. By the way, I'm writing a book. Are we okay with time?
I've got about 5 minutes.
Okay, we've done. You got to come back. By the way,
I'd
yeah,
love to come back for a part two and really
yeah.
take a
There's got to be
deep,
a
deep
part
dive into
two.
this.
Really. Uh, uh, you share this works. Uh, you this works for like skeptics and non-religious people. Why does it work
Yes.
for them too? That's
You
important.
know, I could be skeptical that gravity doesn't really work, but all it takes is falling off a ledge and I'm no longer a skeptic. And what I find with this, I remember so many times I'll work with, if I have a host who has issues, I'll walk them through a simple process. And they're usually skeptics. Like I remember this one guy, pain in his hips and his knees for over 10 years. And he'd been prayed and prayed over it. It never got healed. Taking all kinds of stuff, never heals. So he was a skeptic that this would work because he had tried everything and he believes in the power of prayer and it didn't work for him. So I guided him in through this simple process, and instantly the pain left. And so what I find with skeptics is most people were skeptical. I was a skeptic until they take a deeper dive. And if there's someone that is a skeptic out there, let me just encourage you. It doesn't hurt to try this, but if it gets you free from what you're dealing with, then it's worth anything it costs. And it doesn't cost much. It's just a book. Okay. So, but yeah, skeptics are my friends because even the people I teach at the addiction recovery, they're all skeptics until it happens. And then they go, oh my gosh. It's like, and if you want to watch some really fun stuff, if you go to the prayeroffreedombook.com, go down to the bottom, you'll see a bunch of on-camera testimonials. Some of those are these addicts, and some of them are just other people. And it's amazing what's going on. And they were all skeptics before it happened.
Hey, I'm walking. It's like a thing from Midnight Cowboy. Oh, by the way, you have a favorite movie or two?
Um, I don't. There's a whole bunch of the genre of the type movies I
Yeah,
love.
okay. I kind of figured it out. I get a kick out of spiritual movies, obviously,
Yeah,
and that kind of stuff. I did watch Ben-Hur over Easter a couple times.
I
I
do love that
love
one.
I love that scene when Charlton Heston, Ben-Hur, Jesus is walking with the cross and Ben-Hur remembers that
Yes.
Jesus gave him water many, many years ago when he needed something, and he remembered him. What a powerful scene! I watched that movie. I watched that movie a lot, just to get pictures of back then and what it was like back then to experience that. Of course, I think I've been there, but whatever, whatever. So not to rush, but there's more, and we'll figure it out. And I'm gonna actually stop recording now. Uh, we're gonna do a 2 minute wrap now, but I'd love you to come back because we got stuff to do. And again, I keep saying it. I'm a regular guy, but what you're talking about, I've been down my own little roads, and you put it all together, and that's why I'm intrigued to read. And you can always enhance your spirituality, and I'm doing okay, but I'm such a believer, you know.
Yeah,
I'm such a believer in all that, and everybody knows me knows I'm a regular guy. I used to go to music stuff in Asbury Park. I mean, the whole picture. So, Betty, thank you so much for this, your time, your passion, your spirit. This has been great. Come back. I'm gonna stop recording now. Don't leave. Okay.
perfect.